feel so bad today. I need justice for my daughter. I wait long time for justice. I know what happened to my daughter. And I know today I don't have justice. I know, but the justice is coming.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Good afternoon. As you've all just heard, the coroner's released her verdict in the inquest of Shukri Abdi. The verdict of accidental death brings to a close a painful chapter for the family, one which has been made even more painful due to the failure of all the institutions that were meant to protect Shukri. 17 months ago, this campaign, Justice for Shukri campaign, which is myself, Maz Salim, Shabnam Kulsoom, Eva, and Abdul Aziz, was created in the wake of the tragic death of our beloved young sister, Shukri Abdi. Since then, her mother Zamzam Arab Toure and her family have faced what can only be described as a never-ending nightmare as she demanded answers and the truth of her beloved daughter's last moments on this earth. This vulnerable refugee mother, whose daughter was taken from her in incredibly dubious circumstances, was left in limbo with unanswered questions and her own trauma to deal with, all the while trying to support her other children come to terms with what had happened to their older sister. Her family protected her the moment she stepped onto UK soil, but sadly those authorities who should have protected Shukri Abdi categorically and without question failed her. The facts are now firmly out there for the world to see that this was not merely a tragic accident. This campaign was set up to protect and provide immediate support for the family and to fight alongside the legal team to ensure that the truth of Shukri's death was exposed and to ensure that no family ever has to experience the obstacles this mother had to face to simply get to the truth surrounding the events that led to her beautiful child's death. This was and has only ever been our objective. It was only through the determination and persistence of the family and this campaign that a deeper investigation was secured, and only through widespread calls for action that we have got here today. The investigation of Shukri Abdi's death and subsequent investigations by the school, police and other local authorities have come to represent yet another example of the institutional racism riddled throughout this country. Shukri's family were failed by the school, who failed in their duty of care to protect her, despite being aware of the bullying she was facing. And after her death, they treated the family so badly that Zamzam felt the need to walk out of a meeting after a whitewash report that was put in front of them, and Zamzam was denied an interpreter. Shukri's family were failed by the police, who did not investigate her death comprehensively, and they feel they have been from the initial time when the cops knocked on their door. Zamzam felt they were spoken down to very, very badly, and they have not learnt anything since the Macpherson report. Shukri's family were failed by the very institutions that were meant to that we are meant to trust, by the ones that were meant to protect them. If the school had taken Zamzam's concerns seriously, we may never have had to be here today. Playground, racism and bullying, whether the Sikh boy in Telford, Jamal the Syrian refugee in Huddersfield, or even the tragedy of Ahmed Iqbal Ullah in Manchester, all those years ago, schools have failed to learn any lessons and to protect our children. This year has seen an increased light shone on racial justice in this country, with millions across the world joining Black Lives Matter demonstrations, and Shukri's name rang out in the cities across the globe to mark 1 year since her tragic death. Shukri is no longer with us, but the underlying issues that led to this tragedy remain institutional racism, Islamophobia. The demonization of refugees and migrants continues to this day. We ask everyone to carry forward the determination and strength Zamzam and her family have shown in the struggle against these injustices. And this time we demand action. We must persist, because no family should ever have to go through this again. It is with the support of those people who loved her, her community, and all those who made sure her name was heard across the world that we declare this campaign has not ended. It will go on as we support the family as they come to terms with the end of the inquest and continue on the long road to justice. Thank you.
What now? What next steps? To answer that question, you first need to understand the journey that has been undertaken so far, what the strategy for that journey was, and what the end objective is. to then see what the next steps are going to be. We all know how tragic a situation this was back in June 2019 when little Shukri passed away. And for the family, they wanted justice. And the first step of that justice was to find out the truth of what actually happened here. What is the reality? Not speculation and Chinese whispers. What is the reality of what happened on the ground to Shukri? And also, what is the reality of those who should have been supporting the family and what we did or did not do? And if anything, the inquest has achieved that. The inquest process was not a challenge brought by the family, as some may have said. All the family did was participate in an inquiry process to inquire into the truth, the facts of what has happened. And all they did was make sure that they did not just take a back seat and let others dictate to them what that truth should be. And through this inquiry process and the judgment today, the judgment was extremely comprehensive, 37 pages in length, almost 2 hours long. And it's not often that you see coroners give that sort of a judgment. And during the course of that judgment, all of the evidence was summarised. And it's out there now. The court of public opinion can see for itself what happened here. There's no more need for speculation or rumours. And whether or not the court of law found for us today or not, the court of public opinion knows what the truth is. In law, we follow a maxim in these sorts of cases, a Latin maxim of res ipsa locita. And what that stands for is that the facts speak for themselves. And if there ever was a case where the facts spoke for themselves, this has to be that case. So what actually happened today? Did we win or did we lose? That's the question, isn't it? It's very easy to say, oh, they lost, they got an accidental death decision. But that's actually wrong. Because if you follow the decision that took place today, let's break it down very quickly. We were pushing for an outcome of unlawful killing on the basis of gross negligence manslaughter. Gross negligence manslaughter has a number of steps to it that need to be satisfied. The coroner agreed with us. Circa 90% of the tests that is needed to be satisfied for gross negligence manslaughter was satisfied. It was found in our favour. So you may ask then, well, if it was found in your favour, why was the verdict accidental death? It's because of an anomaly in the law of the final part of the test. Just a few weeks ago, the High Court handed down a new decision for the coroner's courts in these sorts of cases. And the new decision is that it is no longer a criminal standard for unlawful killing cases. In actual fact, that decision was for suicide cases, which also can apply to unlawful killing. That is now a civil standard. And so now there's a question mark over whether the final part of the gross negligence manslaughter test for coroner's courts even applies or not. And so where we have achieved so much, we have got the truth out there, the coroner has agreed with all of the 90% of the test requirements for gross negligence manslaughter. The only part left for us to do now is to take this case higher. So the legal team is now going to be looking at potential for judicial review of taking this case to the higher courts and to have this grey area crystallised as to whether or not the final part of the test which Shukri's case fell on even applies anymore or not. And if it doesn't, then the only verdict that applies would be unlawful killing. So it's not over. It's been a huge victory for the family in terms of getting the truth out there, finding out the truth for themselves, and having the court of law acknowledge that there was a duty of care, there was a breach of that duty of care, establishing foreseeability and causation. And also, there's one final point, isn't there? What has come out from this coroner's inquest is the extent of the police investigation. The family have always been of the opinion that they were not happy with the police performance in this case. And now, it's all laid bare. We can see exactly what the police did or did not do. And that's another announcement that we would like to make today, that the family are also going to be now contemplating bringing legal action against the police for their failures in the way they handled the case initially, as well as their failures in investigating the case. Now, I'm not going to sit here today and give everyone a roadmap of how we're going to do that, because we'll be helping the police. But rest assured, the police will know very soon how and why we position ourselves for that, why we believe they're liable and responsible for their failures. And of course, that also is part of the process. So where we are at now We have finished the inquiry stage of the process, of us finding out what really happened. We are now going to engage in the challenge phase of the process. It is now that the family of Shukri Abdi and her legal team are going to bring legal action. That's going to start now. The gloves are off. We've finished the first stage. It's time for round two.